This is Rick Osmond, and this is the Oompa Loompa Cafe, and I'm joined today by a couple of folks who are going to be speakers at the Midwestern Epigraphic Society at the end of May, Hugh and Kevin Miller, and their focus is discrepancies, that's too mild a word, discrepancies between carbon dating and other forms of dating of fossils and geological formations. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, we have started many years ago, about 30 years ago, and Kevin was with me as well as his two brothers down in Texas, because we had heard from a PhD in physics from Penn State University that there were fossil human and dinosaur footprints down there, and he himself actually cleaned the clay off of a 16-inch long one, and lo and behold, he got toes and the right aspect ratios and good heel and so forth, and there were about 10 or so in sequence, which can identify the critter that made the footprints. There were also dinosaur footprints, 17-inch one that was around there, and that's how we got started. So we said, well, we got to check this out. So we went down to Texas and found a very excellent one, which we will bring the cast to at this conference and so forth. And as a result of that, we went back, and every second or third year we came back again to find more fossil human footprints and to confirm a trail for the 11-inch one that we did find in 1983. Kevin did all the hard work. He broke rock like he was a prisoner in a Georgia prison camp, and he did a very good job and made cracks, and then we managed to put crowbars between the cracks, and all of us heaved hoed and shoved the 12-inch rocks away, and then below that we found 3 inches of clay, like the other teams had discovered before we came down, and that's when we found our 11-inch footprint with 5 good quality human toes in the right angle, the right aspect ratios, and a nice heel. And then that's when we took off, and as I said, came back a couple of years later to find some other footprints, not near as good as this one. Then we did some carbon dating. We wanted to find out how old these footprints were. We found some fossilized, carbonized wood in the clay, and we sent that into the University of Arizona, because we could not find material that we could use potassium argon on, okay? Because that was the first thing that our PhD in geophysics, a new guy named that came with us, that was involved with the whole project. He didn't go with us this time, but anyway, he did some very good searching down there, and could not find any potassium argon material to date. So he said, well, I graduated from the University of Arizona. I'll send them some carbonized material and see if they'll date it. They did. We got in the range of 37,000 radiocarbon years on the, I think they call it the conventional beta system. So we just took off from there, and here we are now. Many years later, we dated dinosaur bones, and we got concordant ages between wood and dinosaur bones.
Excellent. Now, the other thing that goes in there is a cultural base of primarily images that portrays both humans and dinosaurs in the images. And these are found in cultures in South America, in Southeast Asia, in the Levant, a number of places. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about that?
Well, Kevin, you're our lecturer on the dinosaur and depictions, which are rather well depicted in most locations.
Yeah, what's going on with that is just like we talked about a little bit earlier. It kind of shows the coexistence of dinosaurs and human beings, because what people see, they're depicting on cave walls or on, for instance, in the Cambodian temple, a stegosaurus on a pillar or a totem. So people just aren't going to dream these things up, and they just so happen to match what happens to be dug up in fossil form in the mid 1800s or so, and it's a stegosaurus with the plates on the back, the long tail with the spikes, for instance, or it may be a brontosaurus type with the long tail, the long neck, and the big mid body. And they have found these clay figurines where people have molded these out of clay that are from old societies. They've found cave wall depictions, you name it, and they have been found. But the basic idea is if they're being depicted, they have more than been seen by these people, and then therefore made an image of as either an image of a trophy that was hunted, or an image of something that was seen and fought or protected from. So it basically says, here we are, we've seen these animals, and it's part of our culture, part of our lifestyle, our hunting parties, and so on.
Hunting parties, that's right. As a matter of fact, we just, Kevin mentioned the Stegosaurus in Cambodia on a temple there.
At Angkor Wat.
Angkor Wat Ta Prohm, it's a specific one, and it was on I think about 9 feet tall doorway. Other animals on there with it, conventional animals that you see every day in our culture, and back in their time of 1200 A.D. Notice I said 1200 A.D., which is only 800 years ago. Well, we just radiocarbon dated a Stegosaurus bone fragment this past couple of weeks, and it came out at 21,000. I don't know the details, but it was plus or minus 50 years. Wow. So we also dated a Diplodocus, and it dated out at 26,000 in some years, plus or minus 90, and that's 70 million years supposedly between the Diplodocus.
Yeah, there's been a bit of a disparity between the conventional wisdom and what you're finding with this. Now, one of the other things, bits of evidence that has surfaced in the last 2 or 3 years, is that at least one paleontologist in controlled conditions has found still flexible material within a fossilized Tyrannosaurus rex femur. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, that was Barry Schweitzer and Jack Horner. Jack Horner is the paleontologist, and Mary Schweitzer was the biochemist. Anyway, she has a PhD from North Carolina State, and in her laboratory, working with Jack Horner up in Montana, dissolved out the calcium carbonate around the particular part of this body, okay, this dinosaur. And it took about a week as I read the techniques. There was a substance called EDTA, ethylene diamine tetracetic acid. Sorry, I'm a chemist, but anyway, I have to throw that in once in a while. Anyway, they use that to dissolve out the calcium carbonate burial material. And when they were shocked when they took some tweezers because they found some flexible material, said, "This looks flexible." So they twisted it, and it just flexed. It was biological body parts associated with the dinosaur. They also found blood samples, not blood samples, but blood globular.
Probably.
Yeah. So, they this kept them going, and she's written 2 or 3 papers now on the subject. It's been it's been published, let's put it that. But not well received because it
goes against conventional wisdom.
Right. Now, she has tried to defend it by saying there must be some way that these soft tissue material could have lasted this long. It should not have, but it has. So we're looking for reasons why it has. But they did not go to the carbon dating aspect of it, which we had done with collagen, and we also date the bioapatite, the calcium carbonate that occurs during the lifetime of the dinosaur. We dated the bioapatite portion of the carbonate. And we get concordant ages between the collagen, very little collagen. You would expect much to be left. I think we had about 0.35%, very low collagen, and then we would date the bioappetite or date the total organic material. The total organic material would be the decomposing chemicals that were part of the collagen and so forth. Okay?
So let me ask you this. You have, I know because I read some of your reports, you have also gathered soil from above and below the various fossil samples and tried to, at least, extract some data from it regarding what was buried as fossil. Could you describe how that works or what the hypothesis is with it?
Well, we wanted to check to see if the contamination might have been a problem. So we would date the soil. In the case of a Triceratops, it was adhering to the 48-inch long bone sample. We dated that, and it came out within it was about 4,000 years younger than the Triceratops, 4,000 or 5,000 years younger. But that shows that there was very little, from our point of view anyway, very little, if any, contamination whatsoever in that soil. And the soil could have been younger than the dinosaur bone for other factors, which we could talk about when I present, and Kevin and I present our papers. But also down in Texas, when we found the clay in between the Cretaceous limestone strata. The limestone is supposed to be 110 million years old. So we dated that carbonized wood, which was practically 50% carbon and a lot of sand in it and so forth. But it was very black, brittle, and we dated that, and that was in between the two rock strata, between the rock strata of the calcium carbonate that had 5 dinosaur footprints on the top surface, and you take that 12 inches off, like we just described, Kevin breaking up the rock, and then underneath that is 3 inches of clay. Then we scrape that off. It's a clay marl, they call it. So it's very hard clay. So we use tools to get that off. Then we go down to the next strata. That's when we found just about 80 fossil human footprints and hundreds of dinosaur footprints on that next level. It's a wild thing, you know. It proves that the Indians didn't carve it, okay?
Well, I don't think anybody carved it on purpose. Now, the other thing, and this, I didn't find this in any of your information, but are you aware of what's called the Ica stones?
The Ica stones.
Oh, yeah. Kevin, that's yours.
No, actually, that would be you because...
Oh, Ica stones were from Peru.
Correct.
And they were found, as I understand it, also the last 500 years they've been known. I think a priest, a missionary was over there, and he reported back to Spain that there were some strange animals on these burial stones.
Oh, I know what you're saying.
Yeah, okay, that's the Ica stones, yeah. And so that's the first time anybody knew about it. Well, I guess about when they start making their appearance, grave robbers would be very, very strong in Peru, and so they would find whatever they wanted, and they would take these stones. Well, a doctor, I can't think of his name now, he was a medical doctor, a surgeon, was very wealthy, and he came from his ancestry was from the original Spanish down there, and he's got a museum and everything in this Peruvian town. And he collects these stones. He's got thousands of stones that he's collected in his castle museum.
So I guess a fair assumption for these Ica stones would be, since there are these depictions on the stones, would be that, for instance, in the grave that the stone was in might be like a tribute to the warrior or the hunter that was in the grave, things that he had hunted, things that he had seen, or, you know, who knows, maybe even domesticated, although maybe not likely.
Well, a couple of the depictions seem to show humans riding on dinosaurs.
That's correct. The gentleman who did the basic research down there, he's got a book out called The Secret of the Ica Stones. And on his book, caption right at the front of the book, the heading of the book, is a king of sorts in that period riding a brontosaurus, which is very interesting. It's a very attractive title, and we were able to sell that book very readily. And so it's a very interesting concept, but there's enough evidence from both Mexico and Peru that these dinosaurs were interacting with the humans. Even they might have been fighting them, they might have been riding them. Who knows? The depictions
May have been some of each. So we don't have the exact schedule or agenda for the MES conference coming up at the end of May, so I don't know how to tell people when exactly you will be speaking or presenting. But it will certainly be the 31st of May or the 1st of June.
That's correct. I think we'll probably be on. We asked for Saturday morning. Now, whether we get it or not, I don't know.
Understood. I'll also be speaking, and I have no idea exactly when, but that weekend.
Yes, I saw your name on there. I'm going to go to your website one of these days.
All righty. So, Hugh and Kevin Miller, you have amassed a huge amount of information, a lot of which is going to be very, very difficult for the scientific community to digest or divert, either one. So, I applaud you.
Well, I would like to end this with the idea that I think you folks in the Epigraphic Society had similar problems that we've had. And that is the arrogance of the present is to forget the intelligence of the past. And I think your organization, in which I'm now a member, is doing a lot of very good work, and I particularly like to watch, and both of us, Kevin and I, like to watch the History Channel, whether it be Bigfoot or whether it be the discoveries of the Stonehenge in England and comparing it with the Stonehenge in the United States, which is not quite the same, but similar. It looks like everything lines up beautifully.
It sure does.
And we appreciate that. And the last thing I want to present is that keep in mind that saber-toothed tigers, ancient bison, dire wolf, mammoth, and mastodon all have the similar radiocarbon ages. And their depictions are everywhere also.
Yes.
Same ages as dinosaurs.
Right.
Right.
And so that's very important for anybody who wants to hear the lecture to see the evidence.
Yeah, the evidence is compelling. So I encourage anyone who has any interest to come over to Columbus, Ohio at the end of May and meet up with us at the Marriott Airport, or Airport Marriott, I forget exactly how they phrase it, but at Columbus, Ohio. And I thank you, gentlemen, for being with us here on the Oompa Loompa Cafe. This is Rick Osmond, and we will be back with more later on.